So in this video, we're going to evaluate the given limit. So we've got the limit as x approaches 9 of the function 3 minus the square root of x divided by 9 minus x. So first thing I always do is I just try to plug in 9 for x and see what I get. So I have 3 minus the square root of 9 over 9 minus 9. Square root of 9 is equal to 3. So that's 3 minus 3 over 9 minus 9, which is 0 over 0. So there's an indeterminate form here. Now, in the past, when we've seen this 0 over 0, we might be thinking, oh, this x approaching 9 means there's this x minus 9 factor. Maybe. Okay, maybe not, right? But whenever I look at this, I don't really see an x minus 9 factor in the numerator. I don't really see that in the denominator unless I factor out a -1, right? So we're kind of stuck here, right? There's a very tricky way to factor, all right? There's a very tricky way to factor this denominator here. But an easier way potentially to do this is to multiply by something we call the conjugate. Multiply by the conjugate. Now, what is the conjugate? The conjugate of this numerator here, so 3 minus the square root of x, what would I multiply by? 3 plus the square root of x. That's the conjugate there. So I'm going to take this, okay, and I'm going to multiply by the conjugate. Now, if I multiply by the conjugate in the numerator, what does that mean I have to do? That means I have to multiply by the conjugate in the denominator to keep it the same equation or the same function, okay? So whenever I do this, I need to use FOIL, okay, first, outer, inner, last, so first, outer. So that's going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. And then outer, which is 3 times square root 3, so it's 3 square root 3. I'm sorry, 3 times square root of x. And then inner is negative square root x times 3, which is -3 square root x. And then last is negative square root x times square root x, which is just x, okay? Square root of x times square root of x is the square root of x squared, which is x in absolute value, but we're going to deal with positive numbers since x is approaching 9, we're positive, okay? Now in the denominator, I'm just going to leave it as is. Don't try to complicate your life. 9 minus x multiplied by 3 plus square root x. So let's simplify this. The numerator, these two things cancel. They cancel each other out. So what do I get? The limit as x goes to 9 of 9 minus x over 9 minus x times 3 plus the square root of x. See why it was beneficial to not multiply through the denominator? Because now I see that this factor and this factor will cancel each other, and I can cancel because I'm taking the limit as x approaches the 9, right? So this becomes the limit as x approaches 9 of, well, what's left whenever I cancel? 1 divided by 3 plus the square root of x. When I plug it in now, I get 3 over square root of 9, and so there's 1 over 3 plus 3. So that's 1 over 6 is my answer, okay? So multiplying by the conjugate is a very tricky and sneaky and powerful way to be able to solve these indeterminate forms, all right? So just to give you one more little trick, say you had x squared, and then it was like -7, okay? There's a way that you can factor this. I know you're thinking, well, 7's not a perfect square, right? But watch this. You can factor this to be x minus the square root of 7 times x plus the square root of 7, right? Okay, the only thing that happened, you know, this was a perfect square, but this was not, right? And so even though it was not a perfect square, we could still write that square root of 7 in there, okay? Now the same idea works if it's just x and then maybe, I don't know, -4 or whatever. Now, how does this work? It's the same idea that we used to apply to this right here. X is not a perfect square, but 4 is. So when I take the square root, I have the square root of x and then -2 and the square root of x plus 2. So the factor x minus 4 actually can break down even lower. So maybe you didn't know that. That's a little devilish trick on factoring though, okay? So even linear factors we can break down into multiplying by 2 square root factors, okay? So kind of a cool little trick for you there if you're into tricks. If not, you know, multiplying by the conjugate is a great way to get to your answer. All right, guys. Well, good luck.